Hello. Well, this could conceivably be the beginnings of something, but I'm not sure what. My name is Jack Jester. My wife Hannah and I have a tiny little company called the Woman's Channel. And we live kind of in the middle of America. Now, as I'm sitting here, it's the end of May 2006. Not a clue what the date is when you're looking at this. Could be 2006. Could be 21/6 for all I know. Most of my life I've been a producer of television programs or a technician somewhere in the video industry. I started out as a lighting director long time ago. Done some entertainment programs, done a lot of documentaries. We still do a few little programs. We live in a place with a lot of country music, so we do some music once in a while. Maybe we'll show you some bits and pieces of that. Most of our programs are about the lives of women. And that's why we call it the Woman's Channel. I'm 75 years old, and I'm not even sure that statement has any meaning to me or any logic. We seem to start off kind of young. There are not a lot of 75-year-old babies. And we gradually, it just takes forever to get to be old enough to go to school, and then 21, old enough. It used to be 21 was old enough to drink. Well, eventually, 60, 70, 80, just sort of an abstract figure you hear. You don't believe that'll ever be an element in your life, but there comes a day in which you realize, maybe last week you got old. And in our business, sometimes it takes a little while to organize these projects. You and I are sharing the beginning of a project. I don't know if this is going to be the first video blog, but it's an early video blog, and it's probably the first one of this type. So I don't know that it has a particular end point. It's not like we're doing a pilot and then we're going to do 4 shows and see if you like them or any of that. I don't even think this is particularly designed to make any money. We've gotten really crafty in recent years at doing things that don't make any money, so that wouldn't be a great show. But you get to a point and you think, boy, I read once about David Lean, a great producer, director. I don't know if you've ever heard of David Lean, English producer, director. The film I remember him for was called Lawrence of Arabia, a kind of a classic of its day, and I don't know when it was made, 30 years ago, maybe 20 years ago. But he realized when he made it that from the beginning of the concept until it was all done, he was ready to start something else, was 5 years. And he had certain things he wanted to do before he got too old or died, and he was running out of 5 years. And I'm running out of 5 years. And there's some things I want to do, and this is probably now, at this instant, kind of at the top of the list. Sometimes you look back and you're a little confused as to what have you been in your life? What did you turn out to be? I turned out to be a male. I'm not a cute teenaged girl. I think I ended up turning out to be a writer. I'm trying to communicate with you with words. And so often people who put time and effort into selecting words to reach out and touch someone are some variation of writers. Now, we happen to have a little broadcast studio in our home, so there's a camera sitting out here, and there's lights and microphones, and like that, I know how to operate that hardware. Um, but the big thing I've realized, Hannah and I have 6 children between us. We are 2 single parents who hooked up 24 years ago, and we each had pretty much identical families. Each of us had an older son and 2 younger daughters. And those 6 kids have now produced 10 grandkids so far, 8 granddaughters, 2 grandsons. So we're very tilted towards women. And their lives are very important to me, but we don't interact very much. None of the grandchildren live near us. We're thousands of miles from them. Just life works out in certain ways. Your children grow up and they fall in love with this human or that human and this lifestyle and move to that country or whatever they're doing. And so for many thousands of years, families tended to live pretty much in the same village, but the last couple of centuries that sort of changed. So our closest grandchildren are almost 2,000 miles away. And they're all different ages. Um, from quite young, just not in kindergarten, to one started college. And I've looked at things I've worked on all my life, and I worked very hard on some of them, but it turned out, in my opinion, they didn't mean anything to anybody. They provided income, we could get groceries and pay the rent, but you'd like eventually to do something that might have a little bit more meaning than that, if possible. And in my case, I would really like to do something that would improve the quality of these 10 grandchildren's lives and maybe improve the quality of your grandchildren's lives. If you've been in television a long time, you might hold yourself accountable for not doing a lot to improve the quality of anyone's life. Very questionable what we've all spent decades creating on television. But if you could figure out, I mean, none of us believe we can change much, or most of us don't believe that. There are a few people, I guess, that are very wealthy and powerful, and they think they can do anything. But most of us aren't certain that we will ever do anything that will matter very much to anybody. And I certainly feel that way. And it sounds like, well, if you were going to improve the quality of grandchildren's lives, what does that mean? What would you do? I'd love to reduce any unnecessary suffering they might go through. I'd like to improve their means of making sure they meet all their basic needs for them and their loved ones. That's a real struggle for our species. It doesn't seem to be something we gracefully accomplish very well. Hannah and I live out in the country. I walk up and down country roads, and I have a relationship with domestic animals out on the country roads, and some of my pals are mules and horses and cows and birds that sit up on telephone pole wires and watch the stupid things we do. And they all seem to work somewhat cooperatively, and this season they eat these things and they have their young and they have shelters and they seem to take care of one another quite well. But we don't. Over here's more food than we can consume, and over here's people that are hungry. We know how to build nests. But over here are people that have children, they don't have a nest. So we're a screwed up species. And I think we are particularly screwed up in a couple areas. One, we have a lot of power. We're the species that's now threatening the existence, the continued existence of all the other species. We're threatening the healthy existence of our own planet. We're capable of making our planet unable to sustain life. And we seem to be moving in that direction. We're God's mistake, apparently, but we are not good at managing power if you look at the last 8 or 10,000 years. And we're terrible at it right now. And we also don't seem to be very good at managing relationships. Relationships work pretty good on average in our species for males, but they don't really work all that well for women. I don't think that's the fault of the women, but because we've got these 4 daughters and 8 granddaughters, that's a big worry on my part. So let's just say that maybe you're not the most powerful human. I mean, if you're the most powerful human on Earth and you agree that some of these things ought to be taken care of and you have the power to take care of them, then pretty much that'd be great. I'll give you a little list and you think it over, and anything that you think you could do to just fix all this, that'd be wonderful. But if not, if you don't necessarily feel that you've got overwhelming power, but you're worried too. I mean, when my parents had me, they thought my life was going to be much better than their life had been. That was a traditional way of thinking. Most parents believed that in every generation, and they generally tended to be right. Their children's lives were better than their lives. That's not true now. I don't think my grandchildren's lives are necessarily going to be better than mine. Now, I've had an okay life, but I'm looking ahead, and it's looking very edgy to me. So, could we kind of work together, maybe, cooperatively, and accomplish some things? One of the elements here is there's a little fly running around here. Now the fly is being thoughtful. One of the things is, who do I think I'm talking to? You're sitting out there. Probably. I mean, you could be laying out there or standing out there, but you're out there. And the minute this started, you knew, oh, it's some old geezer. But who do I think you are? Well, okay, we need to define that. I think you're a woman, and I think you're a midlife woman. Those of us who create programs imagine the kind of audience we're seeking. And I'm seeking one midlife woman at a time. And I think you've probably had a kid or two, and they're getting up to where they're going to live their own lives, whatever that may mean. And you've tried this career and that career and this lifestyle and that lifestyle and this bozo and that bozo. And so somewhere in here, maybe your 40s or so, and you're thinking, okay, I've done the following things so far, and there's quite a few things that I haven't done. And some of these things I just as soon not do any more of. And there might be some things I would kind of like to do that I haven't done. So you're in that mood from time to time. I think you're bright. I hope you have a sense of humor because we're going to need that. So, and I think you're quite wonderful and quite complex. It turned out in my life that those three children I mentioned struggled for 12 years to raise me without their mother or a wife or before we found Hannah. And that was the most fundamental learning period of my life. When we began that situation, their mother decided she wanted to go away and do something else, wanted to be a singer. And my two daughters were 1 and 2, and my son was 5. And she left an empty home. We had 2 homes, one in Sherman Oaks and both up on mountains. We were moderately successful in television, and one in Laguna Beach. That was the new one on the higher mountain, and she kept that one. And it had all the stuff in it. We'd moved out of the Sherman Oaks home, so it was empty. So we woke up one morning, and the kids and the family dog and I are living in the empty Sherman Oaks home, and I'd never given a lot of thought to, did I, for instance, know how to raise children? And I didn't. So they knew, so they taught me as best they could. But we watched what women who were raising children did and tried to help me learn to do those things. I tried to copy them. Failed. 12 years. And so I had to study women seriously. And that led me to eventually come to certain conclusions about both males and women. I'm not a believer in males being particularly terrific or useful or interesting or any. And I divide women into 2 groups, women that I think are sensational and females that I think are quite questionable. But anyway, so I think what we better do here is I better explain who I think you are. And then you'll know, okay, he's talking to me, or he's not talking to me. So I wrote something here a few weeks ago to get ready to have this little meeting of ours. And I'll just read it, if you'll allow that. It's called The Many Women Inside of You. It is important that you understand that your body has 2 basic parts. Each part lives its own unique life, though there is constant interaction. This is true only of the bodies of women. The basic division into two distinct parts began when you were a very young girl. Perhaps by the age of 3, you began to realize that you had an outside and an inside, and these two parts were very different. For all of the years between then and now, everyone but you has responded to and at times interacted with the outside of your body. Only you have been aware of the inside. While the outside has changed somewhat over the years, these changes have been gradual and somewhat predictable. This is not true of the inside of you. A group of women have been born at different times inside you. They are not only different ages, they are radically different in personalities. They have an amazing variety of very distinct desires, opinions, needs, and fears. They compete with one another endlessly for control of the outside of your body. Excuse me. One is shy, and she is born when you were quite young. And as your outside ages, she remains young. In time, a different woman is born, and she rather enjoys showing off now and then. She may begin as a tomboy, but when your outside body changes in the teen years, she becomes at times nervously sexy. She is curious about lifestyles and is particularly interested in some other bodies. In your mind, she may at times become brazen, and when she wins temporary control of your outside, she has far more fun with your outer surfaces than the shy girl ever has. A can-do independent woman is born in you sometime during your early school years. Throughout your life, she is often in control of your outside. She is practical. She has common sense. She is good in school, and after that, she is good at the work you do to produce income. She often argues with a completely different woman born in you as your outside changes from girl to woman. This one is a romantic dreamer. She loves certain fantasies, and she is idealistic. She and the can-do practical woman argue about relationships throughout your entire life. Right now, each has her own list of who you should and should not relate with, and absolutely different ideas of what to do with your outside body as a relating tool. And then, perhaps after some early life relationship failures, a woman may be born in you who is simply a hot, sexy woman ready for new challenges to explore. Sometimes she only gets control of your outside by getting you drunk or loaded. She is one of the least explored but most fascinating women in you. Sometime after high school, but still in younger years, a sweetheart is born in you, and perhaps at some point, a wife. Eventually, a true lover may be born in you, though that is quite rare and never comes before sweetheart and wife. Each of these is a totally different woman. They dress, act, and speak differently because their interests, desires, and life experiences are very different. While the shy girl is being prudent, and the can-do practical one is earning a living, and the sexy one is impatiently waiting for Saturday night, the sweetheart and in time wife is living and exploring an actual relationship. Clearly, this affects most decisions about what to do with the outside of your body. These choices involve actual physical sensations. When the outside of your body is touched, the nerve endings in your skin rush messages to that gang of very different women who live inside you. And there are extraordinary arguments about what to do next or not do, and why or why not can get very confusing and noisy. None of these different types live in males. I am a male, and I can tell you exactly who lives in us. There is a demanding 2-year-old you have all met often. There is a horny 16-year-old. There is a self-absorbed grouch. That is about it. And these three rarely talk at the same time. It is quiet inside us. You ask us, "What are you thinking?" And we say, "Nothing." You don't believe us because it is never quiet, apparently, inside you. But usually we are not thinking. And if we are, the dialogue is very short. We want simple things: food, sex, booze or drugs, play, and sleep. The 2-year-old is usually in charge. The 16-year-old wakes up when new breasts appear. The grouch works with the 2-year-old when someone wants us to do something or perhaps stop doing whatever we are doing. So that's us. You may believe or hope that you have just met inadequate or disappointing males, and that better, more interesting ones exist, and in time you will find some. This may be a false hope. So, back to you. The outside of you clearly has unlimited potential. The women who live in you, however, never agree about what you should do with that desirable, amazing, sensational outside. There's a mean old woman who lives in you, and she hates almost everyone in your life. If she gets angry enough, she is an absolute terror. There is a very caring humanist who lives in you, and when she sees unnecessary suffering, she wants to fix things and see that real needs are actually met. There is an artist living in you who is absolutely unique, but often is held back by the practical woman. The second half of your life will be far more enjoyable and meaningful than the first half, and she needs to come out more in those years. A spiritual woman lives in you, and the habits of organized religion and political and economic reality offend her. She also needs to be heard more in your second half. Some will say an employee may live in you, and in time a career woman. These women, of course, have their own hairstyles, wardrobe, and use well-organized word choices and rehearsed mannerisms in public. One of the most unique and powerful women who lives in you is a mother. If this one never appears, you may technically be a female, but much of your human potential will never develop. When the mother in you is born, she stays forever. She may include the other interior women in some dialogue, but she so focuses on the humans she creates inside her own body that the others simply are pushed back. They wait for brief minutes or hours when children's needs briefly rest. Sometimes in life, the mother is a wife, and sometimes she is not. In the long run, children run so much of both your outside and inside that you mostly seek and need rest. Now, children do grow up, though often not in the minds of many of the women in you. They usually eventually leave and evolve semi-independent lives. As this happens, some of you, some who have impatiently waited for years in you, now compete more intensely for control of your outside parts. They have long lists of experiences never tried. They believe as you age, they may run out of time. Do listen to them. For so long you have met the needs of others. Finally, halfway through life, as you approach 50, it may be your turn to be first on your list. There's a long list of things you have explored enough. The women inside have lists and challenges you might enjoy, but simply never allowed yourself to try. You might think you won't like something, but if you've never tasted it, you're not sure. Full life involves trial and error. And then there could be a woman in you that truly startles you. One day, while minding the business of the moment, you look in the mirror and your mother is looking back at you. You will never forget the first time she seemed somehow to be in your image. This could be a pleasant moment or an upsetting one. Whatever your relationship is with other women who live in you, when you see traits, expressions, and mannerisms that absolutely come from her, you will clearly react. Males relate to their mothers as they often relate to you. The 2-year-old wants everything and gives little. If you discover your mother living in you, it clearly will affect your moods. There may be other unique women who live in you. The truth is, the most interesting and important dialogues in your life all take place inside your mind. We out here never hear those conversations. We see the outside of you and hear your carefully edited words. Inside, you compare, analyze, discuss everything in your life. Outside, you play the careful role of whichever inner woman is at the controls at the moment. Your closest friend or most intense lover does not really hear or understand your endless inner thoughts, feelings, and dialogues. One of the reasons you are so interesting is that no one, including you, know which inner woman will get control of your body next, much less have a clue about what she might do with your various parts. We can only study the women you show us. We do not know the ones you hide. My goal is to get you to let some of those hidden ones that make you most nervous come out and play. I think it is their turn. They are interested in new challenges for your body to explore. They have waited a long time. Now it's their turn. Your outside can be a lot of fun to play with if you will let it come out and play. We absolutely, apparently do exist for at least one lifetime. You cannot learn what most pleases or excites you unless you explore. Trial and error teaches. Not exploring wastes life. You are totally unique. No one like you has ever existed or ever will. Let your hidden women have their rightful days and challenging nights. So, that's who I think you are. And I've recently started listening to a new teacher in our life who thinks that as a species we have conflicts between our heads and our hearts, and that men are of the head and women are of the heart. And I'll tell you, here in this culture Hannah and I live in, here in the United States, the heads have most of the power and the hearts are not being heard. So my challenge is to try to figure out how to relate to any of the women in you that might want to see what we could work out that would make life a little bit better for all those grandkids. So, however you began to listen to this particular dialogue, thank you for listening. Tomorrow, I'll try and come up with something more interesting. See you then.